Hi everyone, today I'm presenting my rebrand strategy for Rhode. People make decisions really quickly, especially online. In just a few seconds, they decide whether they understand a brand or not, and if something isn't immediately clear, whether that's the product, the purpose, or the value, they just scroll past it. So clarity isn't just important, it directly affects whether people engage with a brand at all. People aren't just sitting there reading everything anymore, they're just scanning very quickly. So if a brand isn't immediately clear, people just move on, and when there's confusion and engagement drops, it also makes the brand feel less trustworthy. So based on all of that, this is what I'm proposing. A rebrand for Rhode that focuses on improving clarity, accessibility, and the overall user experience. The goal isn't to completely change the brand, but to make it easier for users to understand, navigate, and connect with. To start, Rhode has built a really strong visual identity, but there are a few key issues with how the brand communicates its products. First, the brand relies heavily on visuals, both on social media and its website. While this creates a very clean and aesthetic look, it often lacks clear explanation of what the products actually do. For example, on their website, the descriptions are very minimal and don't fully explain the benefits or ingredients, which can make it harder for consumers to understand the value of the product. In addition, Rhode relies a lot on influencer-driven marketing, especially through Hailey Bieber herself and platforms like TikTok. While this is effective for visibility, it can limit how much detailed, informative content is being communicated directly by the brand. Overall, this creates a gap between strong visual branding and clear, informative communication, which is something the brand can improve moving forward. So, why does this matter? Users tend to scan content rather than actually read it in detail, and according to the Nielsen-Norman group, most people are just quickly looking for key information. So when you look at this example, your eye is drawn to the visuals, but there's no clear explanation of what the product is or does. Because of that, users have to work harder to understand it, and unfortunately, most people won't. They'll just move on. So when information isn't clear right away, it creates confusion, reduces engagement, and ultimately affects trust in the brand. So when we look at the competitive fields, we can see that other brands are doing this better. For example, Glossier is very clear and informative with how they present their products. In this example, Summer Fridays focuses a lot on educational content, explaining what they do and what their products do and how to use them. Overall, these brands still have strong visuals, but they also communicate clearly, which makes it easier for users to understand and trust the brand. Which brings us to where the gap is. Most competitors are doing both. They have strong visuals, but they also clearly explain what their products do and why they matter. Rhode, on the other hand, leans heavily into aesthetics and celebrity-driven content. Like this example, it looks really good, but the caption is "one of everything, really good," so it doesn't tell you much about the product. And today, users expect both. They want something that looks good, but also makes sense right away. So based on everything we've looked at, this is the future direction I'm proposing for Rhode. First, clear product messaging, making it obvious what each product does and why it matters. Second, a stronger visual hierarchy so users can quickly scan and understand information. Also, just improving accessibility so content is easier for everyone to navigate and engage with. And overall, just creating a more defined brand identity that balances both aesthetics and clear communication. Building on those issues, I would adjust Rhode's visual strategy rather than completely changing it. The brand already has a strong aesthetic, but it could be more effective with clear communication. For example, in posts like these, where the focus is entirely on Hailey with a very little explanation of the product. It just says mask and glowing Rhoding. It doesn't say what the product is called or what it does. It would make the content more informative without losing the aesthetic. I would also keep the layout clean, but make it slightly more structured so users can quickly understand what they're looking at. Rhode has a really clean and minimal aesthetic, which is a strength, but again, this post is another good example of how the brand relies heavily on visuals without clearly explaining the product. There's no description of what the face mask is or what it does, and this can make content less accessible, especially for users who rely on screen readers, but also just for general clarity. So overall, improving things like alt text and clearer product messaging would make the brand more inclusive and easier to understand. Overall, this works because it improves the user experience by making everything easier to understand and navigate. It also builds trust because when a brand is clear and consistent, users feel more confident in what they're buying. And finally, it expands Rhode's audience reach because clearer messaging makes the brand more accessible to people beyond just its current audience. And this is an example of what the rebrand could actually look like. Right away, you can see the messaging is much clearer. It immediately tells you what the product does: hydration, barrier support, and everyday use, instead of just relying on visuals. There's also a stronger visual hierarchy with clear headings, product sections, and call to action buttons, so users know exactly where to look and what to do. It still maintains Rhode's clean, minimal aesthetic, but adds more clarity and guidance for the user. So Rhode is a very strong brand, but it's currently unclear in how it communicates. By improving clarity and accessibility, there's a clear opportunity for growth. And this rebrand strengthens the connection between Rhode and its audience by making the brand easier to understand, trust, and engage with. Thank you for your time.